in my 20s, as I said, this kind of partying and hedonistic, really enjoying life, knowing there was something greater, but not till my 30s that I really wanted to explore, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? Like, what is it?
Woof woof. Welcome to GhanaCast. Today, Guy Shahar is talking with Shirley Tutty, a business development manager and a public speaker with a keen interest in holistic wellness. Shirley is also a Heartfulness meditation trainer.
So, Shirley Tutty, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Your life has been one of transformation from a life of hedonism, in your own words, in your 20s, which set the foundation for a sort of very spiritual emphasis for the rest of your life. So we want to explore that, how that transition happened, and what, the overall theme has been of the later part of your life. But let's start with your childhood. And so tell me a bit about where you grew up and whether there was any sort of foundation of spirituality in your life there.
Thank you, Guy, and thank you for inviting me here and to Canha, to this podcast. So I grew up in a Catholic household with my mom, dad, and I was the eldest of three children, 3 girls. So very Catholic. Went to mass every Sunday, had, the priest come into school, and definitely it formed, I suppose, in knowing that there was a God and there was something greater than me out there. Also, I'm from Hollywood in Ireland, which is my ancestral well. So Hollywood was actually Holywood. So there is a lot of kind of spiritual intonations and I suppose embodiment in the ground there, because it was a pilgrimage to Glendalough, to the monastic village with St. Kevin. So, just if we look at the land and what the land holds in terms of spirituality, that it comes from, I suppose, all angles.
Yes.
Yeah, so, loved growing up in my household.
So very different from the American Hollywood then.
Very different from the American Hollywood.
Any relation?
The original Hollywood, which is our Hollywood, came from the great grandmaster of the post office in Hollywood, Jim Girk, and then he went over to California and placed a flag down on the racecourse and called it Hollywood.
So it's actually named after your village?
Yeah. Okay. And now we have a 40-foot sign on the hill that my dad made for the Tour de France back in, I think, 1997. And now it's even going to be made bigger by the county council in Wicklow as well.
Like the American one, the big Hollywood on the hill?
Yeah, not so not as big, but it definitely, you can see it. And now people come to do podcasts there, and, you have different influencers and American actors and that coming as well. So Hollywood as well would have been the seat of many different films when I was kind of in my teens, on my way out to travel. We would have had Michael Collins and a whole different set of Irish kind of films made there, and we would have had Liam Neeson there, Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, etc. So it was becoming this little hub as well for film industry. You asked about, my spirituality, when maybe, how religion, I suppose, how it formed me in my earlier years. I had this one apparition, I just want to say, and I still disbelieve that it happened, but I was out behind my house one night, probably about the age of 8 or 9, walking in the fields. And again, we had this freedom of nature at that time, you were called in when your dinner was ready, etc. And I saw this huge veiled kind of apparition of the Virgin Mary in the sky, and I got so afraid. Like, I saw it, and at one moment had this enlightening moment, next thing I had this fear that it left, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't tell anyone. I was still only very young, and I forgot about it. I actually put it away, and only in the last, I'd say 7 or 8 years, I actually remembered through a meditation that experience actually happened to me.
What flavour did it have? Because what was the fear about?
Well, I saw it was just the monumental size of this being in the sky, And then the moment it just, I just felt this fear of, I'm not sure what it was. I just felt this fear that maybe.
What did it represent to you, the image at that time?
Oh, it was just like, I don't know, I thought it was a spaceship or something.
No, but what that form, you know, the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, well,
form.
I suppose because I was in a Catholic school and that, and I was brought up Catholic, I suppose it was an amazing experience. But then I doubted it. I think something in me started to doubt that it happened. And then I got afraid, and then I ran home. But there was something, you know, in it that I suppose I was in touch with something so greater than myself. But then I really buried it. It was years before I remembered.
It's just so interesting. Do you have any sense of why? Because if it was you got afraid of the size of it, but it was you had a positive experience.
Yeah.
And a powerful experience.
Maybe I got afraid of what I could see myself. You know, maybe my own powers of what I could see as a young child. And I think I probably shut that down a little bit. You know, that there was something in it, because it was in between that magical oh my God moment to oh my God, like I want to run home. Yeah. And then so from there as well, I was baptized. I would have had Holy Communion and then confirmation, and would have been would have said read at Mass and that. So very nurturing, very caring family. My mum was very caring of service. Her whole family was of service. That's what they grew up, you know, they just served. And then my dad as well, in a different way, you know, through his tradesmanship, etc. And I suppose Mum was very caring and always in the house, and Dad was out a lot working. So when he'd come in, I'd be so happy to see him, but we'd only have fleeting moments with him. And then I suppose my relationship with Dad probably got a little bit more acrimonious as I was in my teenage years, because I was starting to rebel, you know, against maybe the Catholicism, and I was individuating, and I suppose he didn't know what that meant, and then he was trying to put maybe a little bit more reins on me, and then I'm very kind of free in my spirit, so that didn't work for me. So there was a little bit of tension there.
The usual teenage
thing. Yeah.
So you said you rebelled against Catholicism. What had Catholicism meant to you as a was it just nominal? Was it just where you did it and you went along with it and you had a positive feeling about it because it's what everybody did? Or did you have a deeper personal relationship with it? Or did you feel antagonistic towards it?
Yeah, brilliant question. I definitely saw that it formed the sense of community and community relationships and being brought up within a community. I could see that it formed this idea that there was something greater than me, that was God. I didn't totally understand what that was, but I knew that it wasn't the God that they were saying that was this God sitting on the pearly white gates for me. So I was able to see that this implanted in me a seed to develop later, to explore what God really was.
Yes.
But I probably wasn't asking the questions so rationally. They were probably very intuitively deep in my system, and I was asking them, but not so consciously. And I was then in my 20s, as I said, this kind of partying and hedonistic, you know, really enjoying life, knowing there was something greater, but not till my 30s that I really wanted to explore, what is this? Yeah. What is this? Like, what is it?
I think it's quite a common experience amongst people who have a natural spiritual inclination and grow up in a religious environment, that there's also almost this despair at the religion. It's almost, they turn against the religion because they feel something more, and they see that the religion and at least how the religion is practiced and the rituals around it aren't answering what their deeper need was. Was there anything like that in your case?
Totally, yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there, because you know, you would go in and you know that they were saying things at Mass and the Our Father, etc. It was just like it was being said rote and with no real meaning, and we'll fly through that, and then the next thing, and this ritualistic set of events didn't feel to me that there was something so deeper. Now, later on, I went to Latin Mass. And even in Ireland, in the last, through the pandemic and that, there was one priest who kept Latin Mass going. Everyone was socially distant, but he kept it going, and I never knew what a Latin Mass was. And the Latin Mass is actually something that is highly spiritual, and it really is this absolute reverence to Christ and the Lord, in a very revered way, with none of this talking and speaking. And I actually felt that was very spiritual. That was later, that was only in the last few years. I would go an odd time, I've gone, say, 3 or 4 times in the last two years. But it's nice experience just to see what that was.
So if you'd had that as a child, things might have been different. Maybe,
and then maybe even, yes. But then you would hear people at home saying they were so glad that the Latin Mass had finished. They didn't, that seemed to be quite more maybe in the darker era of times. But I would have said there was something more spiritual, because you don't have someone pontificating, at the pulpit. But definitely it formed something that I knew was greater than me, but it didn't give me the benefit of seeing that God is within me. I am godly. God is always out there. You always have to go to the church. You can't say your prayers at home. We'd say the rosary at night time, 7 o'clock every night. Have to kneel down. That was actually quite nice, because there was something more, I thought, meaningful in that. But yeah, that there was always something out there. And somehow it didn't resonate for me. And it wasn't until I started to travel and see other cultural ways and experiences, and how people kind of in that anthropological way, how they view the world and their ontologies and how they be in the world. And then I started to get more answers, and more like that apparition I had, more kind of awareness, and maybe not as stark an apparition, but these kind of appearances of information that created a different path for me.
So more direct personal experiences rather than things that are presented to you as you have to accept them.
Yes, exactly. The dogma and all of that, yeah.
So when you came to that point and you were almost disappointed by religion because it didn't answer the real need that you had, and you didn't have anything else to answer that real need, what was your first attempt to navigate through life? How were we talked about your 20s being a time of hedonism. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, I suppose from there, yes, that's great, because it kind of puts it in focus that from there, from leaving home at the age of 21, leaving a 5.5-year relationship, wanting to get away from it all, but you can never get away from yourself. But you want to get away from it all and move to somewhere different. I moved to Australia, and it was probably in Australia that I probably had definitely had the first kind of access to taking marijuana. I hadn't taken it before, and I had some experiences on that. To be honest, they weren't that great. But I was looking for something different. And then I would have always drank, but that was the culture in Ireland, and I was looking for something greater. It wasn't till I started to go to India, actually, and then across to London, and that I started to get into more psychedelic drugs and use psychedelic drugs for recreationally. But however, these apparitions, these experiences were happening on such a grand scale that I was able to tap into different awarenesses and different cosmic dimensions, and actually perceive the world from a much greater cosmology and perspective, that I was like, oh my God, like this is the stuff that I have been wanting to experience but didn't know how, that there's so much more out there and that I can experience it personally. I don't have to be told about it. And then So that was in my 20s. I travelled a lot. I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Africa. I was a tour leader working in Africa for nearly 2 years, running overland trips on a truck from Nairobi down, from Kenya all the way down to Victoria Falls, and then to the Okavango Delta and to Namibia. I've lived in South America for 3 years, Central America. So, I mean, I've been to all the continents, and so I was having these different kind of anthropological perspectives on the Masai Mara and how people lived in Africa and India and South America, and then being aware of their connection with nature and something greater. And I thought, wow, there's something more, like there really is, even on a sunset or looking at something beautiful, going, this is something beyond me.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you had this spiritual sort of inclination from the beginning. Religion didn't answer it. So you went away, you tried to have pleasure.
Yeah.
But even those attempts to have pleasure brought you back to that spiritual calling somehow. So with the drugs, for example, did you take them expecting to have experiences, or did you take them for fun and the experiences were a surprise?
Both. So I took them for fun and the experiences were a surprise. And then when I realised the power of psychedelic drugs and psilocybin and what it can do, and there's different authors, there's Carlos Castaneda and these different authors that would speak about it. I took ayahuasca years ago in the jungle in Ecuador. I've taken some of these teacher plants. But you know what? Now that I have Heartfulness and Shahar, I know I don't require any of that. But
is that what it took to end the drugs?
It took all of that. It took all of that to actually come back to Ireland.
Yeah.
My ancestral well, not necessarily Hollywood, but back to Ireland to study in Galway. And I found a girl through someone else, serendipitous, and she invited me to a meditation in Galway, and that was Shahar at the time. And I spent 3 months fully dedicated to my practice, those first 3 months. My friends were still taking ecstasy, MDMA, partying, and I just knew that it just fell away. I've never taken a class, nothing. I've never had the desire since my first sitting to ever take any form of a drug outside of myself,
And when you did agree to take your first sitting, was it something that you were feeling, were you looking for something? Were you looking for this? Or were you just searching, as you had been for the past decade, and you happened to come across something that answered things for you?
No, at this stage I had been searching, even in the 20s, amongst, the utilisation of drugs recreationally and for hallucinogenic purposes and for experience and for, looking for something greater than myself and connecting to that. I had these glimpses, and by the time I was 30, coming into my 30th birthday back at home. And then it really was, something was so grounded in me, so deep in my being, that I was on a spiritual quest now. That all of these little minuscule events had helped in the spiritual quest. Now this had to become, my life has to be the spiritual quest. Yes. I'm now the seeker, and I now wish for truth, I wish for answers, I wish for experience, and I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to this. And I'm not sure how. And then these sittings came, and knowing what I got in those first 3 sittings, it was like an answer to my prayers. So
it was the impact of those sittings initially that told you this is my path.
Yes.
It was so soon. It was just in the first
soon,
3. Yeah.
Because I saw my friends going out, and they were, there was this great big rave in Galway City, and everyone was prepared to, take their whatever they were taking. And I was just like, no, I don't need it. Like, I fully trust that what I'm doing here, and this, I didn't know it consciously, logically, this was transmission and pranahuti or any of this, but there was something that told me, my higher self, my knowing, said you don't need any of this. And I partied just as much as they did on total transmission.
Yeah. And what impact did that have on your friendships, on your way of life at that time?
Well, over time, friends fell away as such.
Is it because you lost interest in them or they lost interest in you?
Yeah, I'd say a bit of both. Well, I was probably becoming, I won't say boring, but definitely I probably wasn't going out to party as much. And then you see, from the time I started my sittings, within a year I got pregnant as well with Maya. So there was now, I had, I was in a different category altogether, and I was becoming a mother and still exploring the spiritual quest. So they fell away. So yeah, probably both kind of scenarios there. And then I'm so glad that Maya got transmission,
Maya, your daughter, right?
Yeah, my daughter, that she got transmission when she was in the womb, because again, I was really sick. Those first 12 weeks, I was still cycling a bike in Galway up until I was 8 months, about 7 months pregnant. I didn't have a car or anything at the time. It's quite wet in Galway. And I was still cycling, and I can remember going for my sittings to Nora Ann, and in the wet, pregnant, feeling so sick, but still going. Now, there's a few times I just couldn't. I was too unwell. But just to know that Maya had that amount of transmission satsangs is such a gift.
Is that what sort of incentivized you to go and get the sittings, or is that something that you see now in retrospect?
I think I see now in retrospect, but I'm sure Nora Ann had explained the importance as well, that it was really
Nora Ann
good.
being your preceptor at the time.
Being my preceptor at the time. That it was so important, and this was a gift really. So both.
So how did your involvement in Heartfulness evolve? We have a guru, we have a guide, and at that time the guide was a man called Daaji. We called him Master. When did you first become interested in seeing him and meeting him?
So, Guy, I started to take my first sittings in 2004 in March, and I was doing also shamanic. I was been training as a shamanic counsellor and practitioner at the time. And I can remember on one of my journeys, and Babaji came to me. So he came very directly to me, and we had like a meeting.
Is that in a meditation?
This was in a shamanic, kind of like a shamanic journey as such. Yeah. And I still didn't really know who Babaji was at the time, but it was, "We found you," was literally the message. We have found you. Over the eras, we have found you. So kind of take this seriously. Mm-hmm. So the shamanic stuff fell away. I got my certs and that, but I didn't really continue with it, because again, everything that wasn't resonating was falling away as I was practicing. And then Daaji, 2007 was the first time I went back to India after being there in 1996, 97, when I was more in the party mode. And I went to Tirupur to see Daaji, and we had a beautiful big seminar where he gave this little, glass with his head.
I think this was his 80th birthday.
It was his 80th birthday, was it? And he was speaking on the stage. But I didn't really feel his connection as yet. It was, but I was so happy to be there, and I just loved it. Maya and her dad at the time were in Thailand, and I scooted across to India. She was only 1.5 at the time. So it wasn't until later on her dad and I separated, and I started to go to Denmark with Maya, and on my own quite a lot. And that period of time, Daaji used to come. And
Denmark was where the European ashram was.
Yeah, the Vrad Sande ashram. And it was through meeting him in Vrad's a few times in his cottage that I think that more personal connection. Now, I know it's all about the divine inner connection with our spiritual, teacher, our master, our guru. But at that time, the personal connection definitely came in Vrad's. Really came in Vrad's. And I even remember one of the times flying over to Ireland. Now, I was self-employed, a single mum at the time. flying back over to Ireland, knowing I had to get Maya to bring her back to meet Charity. So I flew from Vrads, whatever the airport was, and then where the Legoland is, what was that airport? Billund, was it? Flew back over, got her, you know, and then made arrangements and brought her back. And I told Charity, I went to Ireland to get Maya. I literally did, for her to meet him, really. And that seminar, it was like she was the only child there. He never stopped, you know, just giving her attention. And with that, he was giving me attention, of course. And I don't, you know, it's not just, that's not kind of egotistical. I'm just saying the effort I made, and it was a genuine effort. I'm going back to Ireland and I'm getting Maya to meet Charity.
And how was Maya with it?
She was probably only 3, so
okay.
She was still only small. So she was fine, you know, she was fine. She was out playing. But I think he saw you know, I made, not that anyone else doesn't make efforts, but I made such efforts to see him. I really, you know, I did. I made it work. So that was where the connection really, I think, formed. And then, of course, going back over and in Chennai and being invited in to go to Trichy.
But I mean, I think even the fact that you were making that effort and you really felt that that's what you wanted to do.
Yes.
That sort of shows that the connection was already there, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. Because the connection was there and I wanted her now to connect with him. Yeah. So the inner connection was there, for sure. And the trust of him as a spiritual teacher, as my guru. And I can remember lying on the couch at home before I split up with her dad, going, the relationship wasn't going to work. I just knew it, and there was no point staying in it for any of us. And it really came to me that for my spiritual path, no one and nothing would stop me. No partner, no person, no one would stop me. And if this was to deter me from my spiritual path, I have to stop this.
And it was going in that direction, wasn't it?
Anyway, and I was very sure to say, no, not this. And now I'm at the point whereby it's just like, anything that is not simple enough and the straight path within this method and mission, and for me, is just not, you know, is not entertained. Whereas I've this personality where, you know, I live in the moment, and I have in this, there's a particular set of methodology to find out what type of character one has and value systems, etc. But one of them is spontaneity for me, and it's very high up on the top. And that's wonderful. It's my strength. But the weakness is I can get distracted, of course, you know, because I'm living in the moment. So anything is in any moment. So I've that flexibility is huge. I'm not a rigid person in any type of way. So that flexibility is huge. But then there can be little distractions. But now I'm very sure that there's, you know, I have nearly half my life lived now.
That's optimistic.
So therefore, the next half can only be this one path. There is nothing else. So now how do I serve the mission? How do I serve it the best I can? And not for a reward or an outcome, but just how can I serve the best, so that on my, you know, the last breath, I know that I've done my best for my reason to be here on planet Earth, and that I haven't wasted a single ounce. You know, because back in the day I could have had, and I'm sure I will, but that I really am consciously living my life through this mission and through Heartfulness. And
do you have any thoughts at this point on what that might mean, how you can best serve the Heartfulness way? Yeah, you know, I'm a preceptor or trainer with Diarmuid, my partner, and that was a lovely way that we were introduced. So I'll say that, and then I'll say what else I would like to do and be within the mission. So we went to Sackcall in 2016, and then we came down. So it was after Charity had passed away, and I hadn't been in Chennai. The last time was 2012 when he had the European seminar. And he kind of said, I have my garden of flowers here, you know, my garden is here. And I hadn't been back since then. So we were in Sackcall, then we went to Fatagar, to the mausoleum
Lalaji, and we ended up in Lalaji's home with his
Wow.
with his grandson.
Not many people have been there.
No, we had lunch there. We were even offered to stay there for the night, and we had a taxi kind of arranged, and at that stage Diarmuid was like, maybe we should go on because we've the taxi arranged, and I'm like, no, oh my God, this is like a one-time offer. But no, they said we could come again. There was no problem. Yeah, so look, we went on, then we went to Shah Jahanpur, to Babaji, and to the mausoleum. We stayed there. Then we went to Chennai, and I just said to Diarmuid, I'm going to ask Daaji if we could become trainers, because you're in the business world. I can, there's loads of people in Galway and the world, and I'd love to become a preceptor. So we emailed Daaji, and the next morning at 6 o'clock, Guy, on the there was a knock on our door, which Daaji had sent his driver to say, go to Rajagopalan to be made preceptors. And there was a cyclone at the time. So we had to actually literally put on rain gear and go through cut trees to even get out through the ashram.
Gosh.
So it was so different being there without him, Chargy. It was like that. The energetic layer of cushioned love that was there just wasn't there in that moment. It was like there was so much change going on. There was chaos. That's okay, because we know that creates change. So it was a very different experience, but it was beautiful as well. So now that I'm a trainer, I think I can do a lot more sittings, and definitely I would like to be more active in growing the mission in Ireland, whatever that looks like. If it's through just be more you see, I've just had a 9-to-5 position, and I've stopped that because it doesn't lend for me to be in my spiritual space, because there's a lot when you get into a corporate job. I see that there can be a lot, depends what one you're in, but there's a lot of conflicting value systems, and it was somewhere that wasn't resonant to my spiritual growth. Now, someone could say it really was, because it was a learning bed, a hotbed, a lot going on. However, it was tiring me, and then I didn't have time for the missions work, really.
Yeah.
So that had to be taken off the table. So I would like to do a PhD. I'm toying with a PhD in Heartfulness and go to Mysore University, but I'm not sure. I want to sit with that a little bit more and see, is that really necessary? But definitely just emulating being, and spreading the word, and just gently, getting kind of more maybe people into, I have a WhatsApp group, so I have 20 or 30 people on a WhatsApp group that we were doing, actually, Guy, we did nearly 6 months of 3 times meditation a day with them.
Okay.
So it was morning meditation, 7 till 7:30, evening cleaning, 6 till 6:30, and then in the 9 o'clock universal prayer, and then they would do their own prayer at night time. So I sustained that for nearly 6 months.
So it's really guiding them through their early time in Heartfulness.
Yeah, and what I would like to do more is with the early starters, is to do something like that for 1 week or 2, or it depends how long. But even 1 good week that you show them, and you come on every time, those 3 times, that they know, and they have a little bit of that's embedded a little bit in their behaviour and their subconscious mind, because obviously it takes 21 days, they say, to change. So that was very rewarding. Yeah. So I'm thinking of doing that again. It just developed from 7-day challenge into
21-day challenge. Yeah.
Into 6 months.
Oh, 6 month
and
challenge.
I finished it in May.
And did they know at the start that they were going to be doing that for 6 months?
No, but some came and some left, and there was probably a core group of 8 that lasted the 6 months with me. And then by last May, I was just like, I'm done.
You can do it yourself.
I'm done for now. Just the showing up online, like it was online, face online 3 times a day. And I was like, okay, guys, girls, we'll take a little break. So I'll see now. There's so much gone on from the Bandara, and I've had so much, I suppose, that I have to digest and assimilate, that I do have a lot of ideas, but I just want to sit and pray over them and kind of connect and see what will this look like as I go forward.
We talked about your meetings with Charity, and how they seemed really transformative. They seemed to give you so much. You said you last went to Manapakam in 2012. 2 years after that, Charity died.
Yeah.
And Daaji, who is now the guide, took over. How was that transition for you?
I had met Daaji as Kamlesh when I arrived to Manapakam, I think with Maya in 2009. He was one of the first people that met me in the ashram, gave me his number, and actually looked after me. Checked in with me, texted me, checked that we were okay. So from 2009, I felt I had a small bit of a personal relationship with Daaji. And then I can remember we had this beautiful walk in Trichy to Janaki Farm, from where we would kind of sit out on the veranda on the farm and walk up to the ashram. And we had this lovely walk in the sand barefoot, and we were just speaking about maybe what I kind of had planned, for the next little while. Because at that time, I'd wanted to bring Maya to the Omega school, but because her dad and I were separated, it's not like you come together as a husband and wife or parents that could say, let's leave and come over and we'll do this. So really there was no real possibility at that time, and I was kind of talking this out with Daaji, and I had him on my Indigo, this quantum biofeedback machine. I can remember giving him a few of these sessions, and he called me the White Witch at the time. Yeah, so I had this personal connection. However, that didn't make it so easy, because still I felt very sad. I really cried when I was in Manapakam, and I really realised how much I missed Charity, because he really was that, wasn't he?
This
like
is
the
when
father.
You went back the year later.
2016, and thinking of me, probably I was looking for something as well in the father, not in the female, but in the fatherly figure as the guru. And I really realised how much I'd missed him. And I allowed that to be expressed when I was in Manapakam. All that came up. So with Daaji then, it took time, but I was very accepting. It was very accepting. And there was probably a sense of a bit of not knowing where to navigate, because there was so much change as well in the mission. However, I always felt we've got such a great chance, and so have I, to develop, because if Daaji's been made a master in front of our eyes, what can we be made in front of his eyes? So it took a little, but I was fine. I don't even know how many months. I'd say it was a few months, and it just took time. And oh my God, it's perfect now. And I love that with Daaji, it's all about the inner. It's about our inner master. It's about the connection inwards. It's not anymore. It's like we've all grown up and matured in our spiritual journey, yatra, and that now it's the deep, deep, deep inner connection, and to go to the depths we can in our yatra, whatever that is for each one of us. So I haven't seen him now since 6 years, so I saw him the other day on Sunday, just more for myself to go, does he remember me? Of course he does. But it's that kind of, would he still remember what I even looked like? But yes, he did, because I said, it's Shirley from Galway, and he goes, I know.
And it's a bit different for Europeans, isn't it? Because in India, the idea of having a guru of some sort is very natural. It's something that's very intuitive for people. For those of us who come from a Western background, it's something new. It's something we have to get our heads around. It's something that when we come to it, it's not like we decide to have a guru and we know what that means. It's like we're going into something new and we don't really have any idea of what that is. How was that process for you? And how was your evolution? Tell me a bit about the evolution of what a guru is for you.
Well, you've just reminded me that I can remember the prayer, "Oh Master." For a long time, I wouldn't say Master. Again, the rebelliousness, and going, well, Master, what's the Master?
What did you put in its place?
I think I said, "Oh God."
Okay.
Yeah, But that took a little while. That was my one last resistance, you know, to say the prayer.
But resistance is one thing, but just that, how did you get a comprehension of what a master is?
How did I get a comprehension of what the master is? I think by being in his presence and getting a sense of who he was gave an understanding of what it is, rather than an intellectual understanding or inner standing.
Through experience.
Again, for me, it's always about experience. It's not, I can read, but it's always more experiential. And seeing him and how he worked. Oh my God, there was this one. A friend in the family ended up in prison on one of my trips across here in 2008 or 9. And this particular girl was used as a mule to bring cocaine across. She was in Colombia and she married a guy, and she was being utilised as a mule. And she got caught coming in.
Can you explain what that is, in case people don't know?
Well, it's where someone is used to carry cocaine, probably to swallow it, and to bring it across and traffic it from one country to another. So
quite dangerous as well.
It's very dangerous. And she was caught, only 18, and she ended up in prison, in the highest maximum security prison in London. I can't even remember the name, what that one would have been, but May West was in it, you know, this the West. So it was really a high maximum security prison, and I went to her on my way to see charity, on my way to Manapacum, and I said to her, I'm going to tell my master, and I know he'll do something for you. And she was like, whatever you can do at this stage, because I'm deeply in it. So off I came across to Manapacum, and he invited me to Tutty, and we went to Tutty. And in after Guy, one of the satsangs, you know, the way he'd sit, and we'd be sitting in front of his cottage, and he went to talk, and he said, I want to talk about the prison system and how. And he started to talk. Now, I would love the recording of this, but he started to literally talk about prisons and people in jail. And I'm going, oh my God. So then it allowed me to put up my hand to say, you know, about this particular situation. And he just said, look, sometimes these things happen. It's, you know, nature has a way to rectify itself. This is part of a plan. She also has, you know, to take responsibility. But he would pray for her. 6 months later, she actually was brought up in a commune that I suppose the psychologists in the trial were able to say, well, it was really a cult, and that she was easily brainwashed. But she got out of jail within six months later, and she now has worked in Facebook for years as the PA to one of the top guys in Facebook in England, and her career path has taken off. And she should have been in jail for about 8 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. And 6 months after I'd been in India, this happened. Now, is it coincidence?
Does she know?
I told her, yes.
Does she believe that?
Yeah.
Does she believe the
connection?
connection?
Well, she believes something happened. Yeah. And for me, that shows the power of a master. For me, the fact that he was able to talk about this. Why would he talk about jails and prison cells and prison and the system? And for me, that was one of the big kind of, oh my goodness, like he can read my mind, he can read everyone's heart, mind, soul, he knows everything. And that was one of my formations of going, like, gosh, what is it I'm involved in? It's something superior. And then seeing him interact with people and his kindness, and at times he could be, you know, whatever someone wanted, he was their mirror. And to see that, and just the inner connection, the love I had for him. The inner love, and the even though you don't personally know this man, but you love, there's something divine and deep and connected, and the constant remembrance, and all of that forms that this now is my gur, this is my path. Why would I not have someone to take me across when I pass over into the next realm? Like, I'm not doing that on my own. So all of those things form that I'm copper fastened, that he is my master, Daaji is my master, and I am my inner, you know, and they're guiding me, he's guiding me for my own inner mastery. Yeah.
And when you look back over your journey, is there any advice that you wish you'd heard that would have helped you at that time that you would like to give to anybody who might be at that stage now?
Well, I think when we go searching, and we go searching outside ourselves, especially in terms of like recreational drugs or anything like that that's exterior, that if I had known that I was looking for love and a divine love, a very different type of love, and that this particular, by being in the presence of someone with such huge capacity and being, on this planet for a particular mission, that they can deliver this divine love into us, this unconditional love, and that's all we're really looking for through whatever way we're experiencing it, that you can get that without having to go and do all the other things. You can really have that now. However, it's choice, so it just depends what people choose, but that it's so simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's so, the method is simple, and that it is so beautiful, and there's nothing that can touch your heart as much as the love that is transmitted from these superhuman beings, like these, like spiritual teachers.
And do you think you would have heard and understood that message before having experienced what you've experienced to get there? Maybe sometimes we need to go through maybe sometimes there's no advice that can help. We need to go through our I think so. I think, Guy, that's, I totally perceive that, like, that people sometimes have to do the harder slog and do it and then come around. And if they had it earlier, they mightn't even appreciate it, So again, I think it's everyone's, our spiritual yatra, our journey is so individual and so unique that it just depends. However, I suppose the most important thing is to emulate, we talk about talking it and that, but it's really walking the talk and emulating something greater. And I was in Lalaji's, the Peace Museum, and he said, I'm very, keen on spirituality, not his words, but he said, I'm even keener on character formation. And I think it's really important that we, and I can't speak for others, but my character continually reforms itself, and that I'm continually self-reflective and can emulate, can be something, from an authentic space, and then that might be that the message is given without even this, the talk to that person, and whether they still go on the roundabout journey or not, that's up to them. And is there something you'd like to say about character formation itself and the role that that's played for you and what that means for you actually on a daily basis?
Well, I think this is one great thing that my father taught me, because I was never perfect for Dad. He had this perfection in his world that, we had to be perfect, which is totally untrue, as we know. And so even though sometimes it was tough to be a little girl with him and not be perfect in his eyes, that criticism, because it was criticism, one could, flesh it up and say it was feedback, but it was quite his inner critique being expressed upon me, probably a lot of what he didn't like about himself, he could see in me. And the shadow, Jung speaks about the shadow side. However, that level of criticism allowed me to actually, over time and with heartfulness, to be able to accept criticism and feedback and to be humble in that and know that that's okay, because I'm forever evolving, and if there's something I've done or been incorrect to someone, that I would be the first person to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and that I will reflect and go, I will change that. Hands up.
You're not frightened anymore to see the imperfections in yourself?
No. And actually, just to know that every day I'm a new person, I can create myself with them, and that if I leave me into their hands, spiritually, it still means I cannot abdicate the character formation part. And I think sometimes in spirituality we want to do that. We want to hand it all over.
Yes. The lazy approach.
Yeah, and I do sometimes find it interesting when you see, you know, people meditating for years and then you see a particular form of character and you go, that's really interesting. Because if that person is 30 years meditating, but there's still that whatever, and that's not very congruent, you know, that would give me a question, of course. So for me,
although we don't know what they were like before, they might they might be 100 times better than they were 30 years ago.
Absolutely. But again, it's not. Again, it's about me for me. I'm just using that as if someone sees me even like that. It's just to see that it's congruent, so that every day is a learning day. Every day I have to formate my character. I have to reflect. I have to go, was I the best character I could have been? Could I have done something better? Like recently, there was something with a bucket of water in the shower, you know, with an older lady, and I didn't realise that it was her bucket, and I took the bucket because I was feeling unwell at the time and I was using it for Vicks to try and inhale. But I reflected back that night and said, you know, as an elderly woman, really I probably should have handed her what was my bucket.
Yes.
But handed it back to her.
So even if you'd been right and it had been your bucket, you could still have...
I still could have been better because it was my... It's funny, it wasn't my bucket. But you know, it was just like I could have probably just said here, but I was a little unwell, so I just wanted the hot water to put Vicks in to actually inhale. You know, with stuff like that, I still could have done something better. You know, what can I do better to be a better person and to have the compassion, to have the love, to deliver it out? And one girl left recently and I only spoke to her. I spoke to her a little bit, but just before she left, I didn't realise that she was quite tight for money because her Visa card didn't work here in the ashram to take out money. But she never realised she could have used her card to top up, you know, in the canteen and that. But it wasn't until the very end. Now I gave her some money just to get her to the airport, just to give her an extra bit. But even that, I thought she was lying beside me in a bed for a week. Now, again, I hadn't been quite well. I've been going through my own cleaning. But again, I felt, if I had just talked one little bit more to her, gone a little deeper with her, I could have helped her maybe a few days earlier. So we never even know who's beside us in the ashram and how we can maybe make a little bit more of an impact. Yeah, so that's it.
And
really.
It's a very different way of living than the I guess, the conventional mainstream way, which is about justifying ourselves, which is about trying to tell ourselves, I didn't do anything wrong, everything I did is fine. And it's like, it's a form of humility, isn't it, to be able to say, how could I be better? You know, however, it's not for me to judge how good or how bad I am, but how could I be more in line with how I want to be?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, these experiences... See, if we don't have the self-reflection part and the consciousness to actually self-reflect, I know we have it in the prayer at night time to reflect and say, you know, we're sorry. And I suppose that's a very important place to do that. So it does allow us, if we don't have it developed anyway, it allows us to develop it there or go deeper into it at that stage. Yeah. So I suppose, again, congruency between the outer world and the inner world, you know, and the value systems and what do we value. And I know you have Liz Kingsnorth to speak with, but, you know, just even looking at heartfulness communication, you know, and how that can help us with our character formation. It's very, again, seems very easy, but when you have to start to apply it. And again, that's forming our character, to learn to communicate, you know, more heartfully. So, yeah, so it's whatever I can do to be more heartful.
Wonderful. Shirley, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really interesting talk, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Guy. I'm really appreciative of this. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of KanaCast. Please follow and subscribe to KanaCast on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. Until next time, woof woof.